the introduction. I'm here together with Martin Gartenschläger. He is he's going to tell you the story about how to get climate neutral. And I think it's a very inspiring story. And I think it's very practical, like how can you also be aware of your emissions and reduce them, hopefully to zero. But I think we can start. So over to you, Martin. And I just want to tell the participants, if you have any questions, please ask them in the Q&A box. So we will be having some time at the end of the session, and I will ask them for you to Martin. So please do that. And for now, over to you, Martin.
Thank you very much, Mika. Thanks for the nice introduction and for all the support so far. Yeah, hello to everybody in the webinar room. I can't see you, but nice to meet you here online. Please feel welcome. Yeah, Renee asked me to give a talk about my way to climate neutrality, how I organized it in the last years to make my own company climate neutral. So this is a story about, a few facts about me. My name is Martin. I'm from Germany, the northwesterly part. You see the red dot there on the landscape, close to the border to the Netherlands. That's where I'm located right now. By education, I'm an MBA and systemic coach. So over the last years, these soft skills became more and more important for my job. I started a classical industrial career in 1991, and I became self-employed in 2010. And since then, I'm supporting companies with lean management, with change management, and with coachings and what have you, whatever makes sense to me and what the customer asks for. With my company, it's lean and more. So lean, of course, is I think is clear, and more means it is the things that I bring in, except the lean tool base, like change management, communication, and stuff like this. So the big question to me was and still is, why become or why being climate neutral? And there's a short story behind it. It was in 2012. My wife and I, we had a discussion, and our two daughters were very young at that time. And we asked ourselves something like, if our grandchildren will ask us one day, have you done your maximum to protect our Earth since you know about the climate change? What will we answer them? This was a question that my wife and me, we asked ourselves, and our answer was a clear no. We didn't do the maximum to protect our Earth. And, we talk about environmental protection since decades, but really to have an awareness about it, that it's later than 5 to 12. So this was in 2012 for us. And we came to the conclusion, no, that's not enough. We know about the problems, we could do more. And this changed our attitude. So we stopped using airplanes for flying into holidays, and we try to become more and more sustainable. We are not these 150% economists or ecological friends. This is not our way, but everything that makes sense and what gives a result in avoiding waste, avoiding energy and stuff like this, we do it. So yeah, this was the part where we started our journey, and to me it became more and more clear over the years that climate neutrality is an attitude, not a project. And I think this is important for my story, and if I follow other stories on the way to climate neutrality. If it's a project, it will achieve or experience all the problems you have around project management. And especially in case where money gets scarce, where you have the sales is going down in your business or in the company, then climate neutrality becomes second priority, third priority, what have you. But if it's an attitude, if it's really intrinsic motivation, then it has a chance to survive. And this, to me, is the biggest lesson I learned over the last years. So climate neutrality is an attitude, and I changed to climate neutrality because I changed my attitude since 2012. So, becoming a little bit more technical, climate neutrality is all about carbon dioxide emissions. And there are 4 steps that are important. The first step is you have to calculate your emissions. And it's not only to measure them, but to calculate, because it's sometimes not that easy to calculate or to get numbers for your emissions. If you're a small company, like a one-person company that I'm doing, it's relatively easy. But if you're a company with several hundred or a few thousand employees, then measurement and calculation of emissions is not that easy. To me, it is relatively easy because I don't have that many things to measure or to calculate. But this is the first step: calculate your emissions. That is by measuring or by calculating. For example, if you want to find out what's the emission for using your car, for driving to a customer, you cannot really measure the carbon footprint, but you can have the kilometer you drive. You have the emissions based on the consumption and by the way your engine is running by diesel or fuel, and then you can calculate it. So that's the first process. And at the end, you know the amount of carbon dioxide that you produce. That's the first step. The second step, and the most important one, is to avoid emissions. So if you know your emissions, you measured or you calculate them, you have the sources, then you can make your minds and thoughts about it, how to avoid emissions. This is the most critical thing, and probably the most challenging part, to avoid emissions. But you cannot avoid 100% of your emissions. There will be emissions left that cannot be avoided. And then step number 3 comes in: reduce your emissions. For example, by switching to another technology, by sharing resources, by whatever comes to your creative mind. So all the emissions you cannot avoid, you can try to reduce. And so this is, to me, the second important step. And step number 4, at the end, if you want to become climate neutral, then you have to compensate your emissions. So these are the 4 steps on your way to become climate neutral. And to me at that time, when I started this way, it was important that it was for me and my company, it was on a volunteer basis. So as a one-man company, I'm not obliged by law or other regulations, but I do it on a volunteer basis. And calculating, avoiding, reducing, compensating, these were the 4 steps for me. Let's have a little bit deeper drill inside what's it. So on the screen, you can see now the timeline starting in 2010. This is the year where I founded my own company, and it's a small forecast until 2025. And on the vertical line, you can see the amount of emissions given in tons. So 9 tons, 18 tons, and 25 tons. So this is the range I'm staying within. So it was 2020. It was in between the Corona lockdowns, where I had really no customers to work with. I had many hours to spend in my office at home and making my minds. I put out my old to-do list and said, what are the things that are, since years or months, what I wanted to do anyhow. So climate neutrality for a company. I said, okay, the lockdown maybe is a good time. I have time, I can spend some thoughts and hours in it. And so I did the first company carbon footprint for the business year 2019. So in 2020, in the lockdown, I did all the calculations for the previous business year. It looks like this. I had assistance from Climate Partner. That's a bigger consulting and supporting company based in Munich. And they offered me an online platform where I put in all the data, the information we needed for the calculation. And at the end of the day, I got my corporate carbon footprint for the year 2019. And these are the documents I put on my website as well. So if anyone is interested later on, visit my website, you can download these things. It's written in German, but yeah, maybe it's interesting just to flip through. So this is the CCF, the corporate carbon footprint. This is a screenshot from it. So you see on the left side, it's the diagram with the biggest sources of emission. I will have a deeper look in a few minutes on it. And on the right side, you have the data given in a matrix, scope 1, 2, and 3. And on the bottom of it is an important number. So if you want to compensate, you have to add some kind of safety stock, or how you call it, of 10%. To get the final amount. So it is the 16.2 tons we calculated plus 10% safety means 17.8 tons of carbon dioxide, which I produced with my way of doing business in the year 2019. So if we see the numbers in tons and we change them to percentage, then it might be interesting to you how a one-man show like me is producing carbon dioxide. So the biggest point is with the car I use. It's a Volkswagen Golf Caravan with 1.6 liter diesel engine in it. And normally I drive around 50,000 kilometers a year. Consumption is 6.5 liter per 100 Ks. So if you put these numbers together, you get around 10 tons. You see it on the left side. The biggest amount is nearly 10 tons. So it's resulting in 61% of my overall carbon dioxide emissions are produced by my car. That means, in other words, I always work at the Gemba with the customers on spot. So I have to travel to my customers. I don't do any online thing. I really don't like online workings and stuff like this. I have to go to the Gemba and work face to face with the people. So this is my way of doing business, and it requires that I go to the customer, to the Gemba. At that time, I still used some flights to go to customer trainings. It was 13%. That's the orange field. Then I have my home office in our house here in North Germany, and at that time I still had some office and training rooms which I rented. I rented these rooms for around about 7 years. So the heating and electricity consumption for my house where I live, where my home office is, and the training rooms that are rented, they are part of the heating and electricity emissions. Then there is something called upstream heating electricity. So all heating and electricity has a story before. If you have a view on the entire supply chain, it's not only the consumption of heating and electricity, but how to produce, how to deliver it to your house, etc. There are certain calculation things that are called upstream. So these are the blue field. And then there are others like my website, my smartphone, my printer, the paper I use, staying in a hotel overnight, and what have you. So, and this gave me a feeling, where to start. So the very first step, calculate your emissions. Maybe you have now a good impression looking at this cake diagram here. If you have this clarity, you can start thinking about where to go, because you know where you're standing and where are the biggest fields to improve. So back to my timeline, you can see now 2019 was the first carbon company footprint. These were the calculated emissions, these 17.8 tons, and I made the decision to compensate the emissions. So this is a green point. Then over the years, I continued, before I started really, I made my set a target. So my target was quite ambitious because I know the consumption. Remember the cake diagram. With this knowledge, I set my target, and my target was set. I want to reduce my carbon dioxide emissions by 50% based on the year 2019. So calculating it, set a basis year and set your target gives you a good feeling where to go and how to handle the entire process. So what happened over the years in 2000, carbon dioxide calculation for 2020, it was very much reduced. It's mainly due to Corona, because it was more or less not working in this year. So it went down. The next step, what I did, I said, well, I want to know what my emissions were since the time that I founded my company. So I did the calculation myself, not the official one, but I did the calculation myself. I had the experience of 2019 and 20. I put it in an Excel sheet. I collected the relevant data for these years and came up with my calculation of emissions for the first 10 years of running my own company. You see, some peaks. There were the years where we're heavily using the airplane, working in the southern part of Germany, so have long distances to go. And these are the emissions over since I founded my company in 2010. The next step was I did some compensation. For the entire 10 years, I set 25 tons as a general amount of emissions that I wanted to calculate, to compensate. So on the paper, it looks that I compensate more than I did emissions. That's hopefully true. I don't know yet. I'll come to this point later, but I said I take 25 tons, and then I have compensated all the emissions since I founded my company end of 2010. So the corporate carbon footprint for 2021 was shown a little bit about 9 tons. So Corona was over. I switched things like green electricity and what have you, and try to avoid emissions, but I couldn't reach my target of 50%. It was close a little bit more. For 2022, the things looks better. I switched heavily to using the railway system. So I put around, I don't know, 17,000 kilometers by railway instead of driving my own car. And this had a big result, or a big effect on my emissions so far. So this year, 2023, will be even less because I quitted my training rooms. I don't use them anymore. So I think 2023 and the next year will be around 6.5 tons of carbon dioxide emissions. So this is a roadmap that I'm following. Yeah, the reason why did it reduce so far? It's Corona, I mentioned already, and then using green electricity, using no more aeroplanes for going to a customer, and replacing the car by railway. This is the biggest effects that I have so far. Next step will be, I'm starting in January next year, I will do official calculations for every year. This is already organized, so it's starting in January, and I have calculated or more reliable numbers about my overall emissions. And of course, I will continue this way to the future. So coming to the costs, what was the price for it, talking in euros? You see the first carbon dioxide report I installed with the help of Climate Partner was 500 euro. The following years, it's in a fee of 300 euro each year. So using that company to support me. These are the fixed costs if I want to write my corporate carbon footprint. The compensations, compensation is the number of emissions multiplied the price for a ton. Ton is probably between 15 and 30 euros. You can choose among different projects. So you see, these are the costs for the compensation. If you put it together, the balance sheet and the compensation, it became more and more easier or cheaper to me. The first year was the 500 euro plus 330, and then the balancing becomes cheaper. And because I reduced my emissions, I have to compensate less. So to me, this is around about 500 euros each year for doing this climate neutrality with a corporate carbon footprint and do the compensation. So yeah, conclusion. Going to local customers, using public transportation, using green electricity, these are the three biggest effects that I could sum up so far. And of course, it's change your business. If you choose local customers, you don't visit customers anymore. They are thousands of kilometers away from you. So this is, of course, a challenge and in customer acquisition and what have you. But you can see the effect. And staying in the language of lean, avoid muda. Huh? Why go to 1,000 kilometers to a customer if you can acquire a customer that is next to you in the same city? Huh? Or why use a car for yourself if you could ride in a railway where 1,000 other people are riding with? So using these lean ideas, of course, will help you to reduce your emissions. Yeah, then you get, of course, your certificates you can show to your customers. Yeah, and the last point I want to give you a little bit insight is the compensation. There's a climate ID tracking where the customers or my business partners can see what I did so far. And you can see if you go to the website for every year the compensation that I show you on the diagram a few minutes before. The project is given, the amount, the date, so this is transparency. So communication is a very important part of climate neutrality if you want to bring the news to your customers and business partners. The thing that I had to make my minds about before was greenwashing. Is climate neutrality, beside the fact that you calculate, avoid, and reduce emissions, is the compensation really worth doing so? And you know, there's a big discussion right now about greenwashing. You buy your certificates and be happy. You know, this is what I made my mind about. And here's my answer to you. If you go to the costs, and it's based on the UN Environment Program, you can see there's a financing gap of 4.1 trillion US dollar. I can't handle these these numbers. So in German, this is $4.1 billion. And the UN Finance Report shows us clearly we have to triple all the nature-based solutions and to fourfold increase to 2050. So, and typically all these finance is from government, it's from donations, and there's a huge financing gap. And this is where, to me, compensation of my carbon emissions comes in. So I choose a project like this. It was water power in Virunga, that's in the Democratic Republic of Congo. You can see it on the map there. You see always the contribution of the project to the SDGs, and you see the project standards. There are different certification standards possible. And yeah, what does the project do? You see here the rainforest and the last living the mountain gorillas in that area, and the people living there, in order to survive, they cut the wood to burn fire and do their job. They show tourists the gorillas and go to illegal hunting and what have you. And the project with the water power is a good countermeasure to it. So they implemented it, and now you can see some pictures, what is changing there. And the effect is they switch from fire to electricity, which is made by the water power. Instead of cutting the wood and bringing tourists and hunters to the mountain gorillas, they got other jobs. And now there's a national reserve protection and ecological tourism initiative. So these are the effects of the project I support. It's calculated against the emission that is of carbon dioxide, which is avoided. So here's my answer to the question: is it greenwashing? You see the costs that I have so far, and this is my contribution by the compensation I did. So I think if there's such a huge financing gap, and beside donation and official money which comes from government, then the huge gap needs to be closed. And my compensation, I put it here over the years, is you can see it's nothing compared to the amount of money that is needed. But this is why I think that it's not greenwashing, but compensation and climate neutrality is worth doing so. So what are my personal conclusions? First, climate neutrality is an attitude. Second, don't be afraid of cost and lost sales. If it makes sense and if it's feasible, just do it and enjoy the good feeling. Just stop my yeah. So this is my personal conclusions, and I hope that I could give you an overview how I did it, and in the best case, you feel motivated to follow this way. Thank you very much for your attention, and all the best to you.
So thank you very much, Martin. And like you just said, I hope people feel motivated to do this too. Well, I'm actually blown away by the amount of research you did, and all of the things you know. So I actually do have some questions, but I would also like to invite people to ask questions in the Q&A box. There's one question for you. Can you show us how to calculate CO2 emission and to show reduction?
Can you show us how to calculate emission and to show reduction? Yeah, to show. I gave the example of riding my car. I go back. This was let's see. So this is on the right side on the you see the table, and I use an online tool, and the online tool asks questions about any activities that in the end produces emissions. So how many kilometers do you drive by car? How many kilometers you use a plane, use a railway, and then what have you? How many nights you stay in a hotel? How many paper things do you need for your job? What kind of heating do you have? What kind of electricity do you use? Do you already have green electricity? And so it goes step by step with very many questions, and you answer them, and then you put in the numbers. For example, yes, I use a car. My car is a 1.6 liter diesel engine using 6.5 liter diesel each 100 kilometers, and I use it for 50,000 kilometers. So now there's a fixed amount of carbon dioxide. If you do the calculation, 50,000 divided by 100, multiply 6.5, and then there's a factor you have to calculate, and this does the software automatically. And at the end, it turns out that my carbon emissions are nearly 10 tons. You see it here in exact 9,884 for the 50,000 kilometers I drove in my own car. This is one way to calculate it. If it's for the flights, you enter where you start, where you end, then it calculates a kilometer, and there's fixed numbers by a global calculation scheme. And then, yeah, if you go 600 kilometers by plane, back and to the customer and back, then it's 1,200 kilometers. Multiply this factor, shows how many kilogram of carbon dioxide you use. And this is a way to calculate. And at the end, there's a balance sheet like this, scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. You see, and overall, it's these 16.1 tons.
Yeah, so I guess the tip is to see if your country or your government is providing a tool like Germany does, or maybe it's a regional initiative.
It's a global calculation scheme. This is
really?
It's not by a company or by the German government. There are 2 or 3 calculation schemes which are accepted by or provided by UN or supported by UN, United Nations Environmental Program. And I don't know the name of it right now, no? But these numbers to calculate, they are fixed worldwide. It's not a German number.
All right. All right. So it's 12 o'clock, so we need to finish. Thank you very much, Martin, and thank you everyone for joining this session. Please go back to the main stage and see if there's anything else to watch. and to learn from. But thank you for now, and I'm
Thank you very
going to
much.
leave you now. Bye bye.